Hello everyone, my name is Boulevard, and today I'm going to be doing the top 4 of APAC, EMEA, and the Americas for the Heart of the Huntress Eternal Opens. I wasn't home all weekend, so I haven't actually gotten to watch these matches yet, but of course I do know the outcomes of them because I compiled all the deck list, and, we're going to get straight into it. I don't want to do, like, a whole preamble thing. So, gonna kick it off with Yada 64 versus, excuse me, Ravix New. I'm going to move my camera, don't worry. But, yeah, the ban strategy here is a little weird to me. Vayne Rumble always introduces this weird level of, like, I know this deck isn't very good, and it has a high potential to just kind of boom out, which is why you don't really see it in a competitive environment too often. But at the same time, if it opens its high roll hand, then, like, you feel kind of dumb for letting it through. Yada's got a really interesting lineup here. Jace Lux was another deck that kind of came out of nowhere. Like, going back and looking at Tournament Tactician, I got a lot wrong, because there were no stats for Elise Nar, which, like, I touched on the existence of the deck. I knew it was a wild card. I didn't know it was going to perform as big as it did, mostly because, again, no stats on it when I made Tournament Tactician, and then when I ran into it on ladder, I just kind of hosed it looking at the deck list. It's very simple, very straightforward, so I definitely was a big surprise factor for me. So one of the things that I'm really looking forward to as we watch these top fours is to figure out what it was that made this deck so good. I talked with a couple of different players, and the way that it was described to me is like Elise Nar is just hands down the best third deck. But I don't know. I think Triple Invoke looked good, so... And I feel like Invoke is very good. Like, this deck feels really weak to Equinox. So, yeah, curious to see how that plays out over the course of the day. But as far as the rest of these lineups, like, Jace Lux is a little surprising. Not the biggest fan of the deck, but hopefully it doesn't get banned so I get to see it in action here. This was just, like, discard aggro out of Yada. It's not like the Scion deck list, It's not that, like, mid-rangey discard type. It's much more just, like, Draven, Samira, Burn. And then, of course, we have, like, Timelines and the Fiora Galio. So, let's actually just jump into the game here. Looks like we can actually get the bans here. Looks like it was Vayne Rumble and the Elise Nar. Let's do this way. There we go. Again, like, kind of weird lineups, so not really sure how the bans are supposed to go there. I'm just trying to, like, watch these for the first time, kind of enjoy it, kind of talk about some stuff. I got Epic Pen open so we can, doodle and go over some stuff.
Let's get to work.
Let me turn down the in-game volume a good amount. I don't want it to be silent, but... Alright. Let's take in the opening hands here. Yada's not as aggressively postured as one might like to be, but Raven doesn't have timelines, which I'm not sure how much that actually matters in a matchup like this. I think the grandma that they opened, whose name, Jax Orin was big for so long, and I talked about this card so often, and I still know. Innovative Blacksmith, I think, is the name. I was about to try and hover it, like, that's something I can do. Like, not having timelines, that's actually a pretty decent card for the matchup. Like, Raven has removal on removal, but I just don't know if they're going to have time to kind of get it down. As cool as Innovative Blacksmith is for healing, like, it's 1 point sometimes every turn, not necessarily every turn, and it has to stick on board for that to happen. And I think that's why we see a level of hesitation here of, like, okay, is this where I am supposed to get excited this castaway, or do I need to throw this unit down? Because they're not developing anything next turn, right? Raven is only... Sorry, I'm trying to use their full name, but that X... Ravix New. We'll go Ravix New. So yeah, Ravix New goes to the pass here, understanding, like, they don't have anything to play on turn 4. They're just going to go for the Get Excited to dodge a little bit of damage. A little curious about the discarding of the Jax weapon, just because that is Ravix New's one avenue towards consistent healing with the Innovative Blacksmith. I believe that she functions every time you improvise or equip for the first time. So one of the ways to get more health back would have been to, like, next turn throw down Vi and then throw the weapon on it, but, doesn't look like that's going to be the avenue. The only other thing I would have liked to see Ravix New discard would have been potentially Blowback. I don't know that that is a card that they are going to get value out of this game, but I definitely understand discarding the Jax weapon, especially when we see how the spell mana lines up here. Only having 2 means that, like, next turn they're not going to Vi and Get Excited. So it makes sense to go ahead and dump that weapon. A little bit of forward thinking that I hadn't really done. And now it looks like Yada's going to use their own... I think they had another I think they had Get Excited. and just thinking, what do I want to discard to this? The weapon's not bad. The spinning axe, though, obviously a classic one. Just get rid of that. You're not too worried about the Draven level up. And now, things not looking good for Ravix Nu, as this is not the best open attack in the world. Really would have loved to get an additional spell mana in to throw down the Pot of Pain, but I don't think Yada's super willing to just pass up the 5 damage on the next turn, in which case, we're probably even just going to see Get Excited come out again. Might even be Blowback, just dumping Fire Wrath and the weapon. We'll see. With the Timeline's top deck, does get a little bit trickier. So now it's probably... Ooh. I like this. Dumps the pot. Says, I don't need this impact damage. I don't need these stats. Finds a Samira to get on board with as well. And now Ravix is in a weird spot where, again, they can't develop and discard something for Get Excited, and play Get Excited, right? Because the Fire is immobile, or not immobile, but it can't block. 90% sure it can't block. So can't even like develop that and then go for it. If they do go for the Vi here, there's a big punish with the Pirouette. Not a huge punish. Like Yada doesn't get to go for Samira, Flare, Pirouette. Not enough mana for that. They are one shy. But even with a Get Excited coming out here, oh, goes for the Vi. It's understandable. Like, in theory, a Vi and a Get Excited are preventing the same amount of damage. You do open yourself up to the Pirouette, which Yada actually just forgoes instead of developing Samira. But even best case scenario, this is 9 damage for Yada. Ravix Nu goes down to 8. That's not a lot, but it's not that little, to be honest. Especially for kind of how slow the opener was for Ravix Nu. So, you know, in an not the worst spot in the world, I guess. It actually gets the option to either take out the Draven or the Sump Dredger. It's got to be Sump Dredger. You just have to stop the absolute most amount of damage at this point. Debates blocking the Draven to deny an additional axe when you go for the challenge next turn. We'll see how that plays out. Because now, yeah, get timelines online, see if you can start flipping into lifesteal units or some kind of residual healing. Makes sense. Yada's still in a really good spot, but they're really starting to run out of cards without any, like, I was going to say without any big refill, and then here comes Augmented Clockling. Exactly what you want in a situation like this. Lets you continue to get on board, continue to find your burn. Meanwhile, Ravix Nu finds the Combat Cook. I'm trying to think of, you know, what 5-mana spells exist that could come out of this melee that can really start to swing things back for Ravix Nu. Concerted Strike was always the big blowout when we were playing against, like, OG Seraphine, but that's because OG Seraphine was, like, Victor Seraphine, and, like, this Victor would get lifesteal and would go to dodge lifesteal, and then all of a sudden, there's Concerted Strike. It knows. Deep Med. I mean, Deep Med for 2 has a pretty good shot at finding you Mystic Shot. And it's only going to be 2 mana. So next turn you could, like, Mystic Shot, Get Excited. But, I mean, if you're spending 2 mana to look for a Mystic Shot, you know, 1, you're going to feel really silly if you don't find it. 2, just finding a Concerted Strike pretty much just as good. I think that Shock Blast is really just indicative of Yada saying, hey, I'm not going for an open attack. Or maybe they even do go for an open attack anyway, but I don't... The best way to put it is I don't think I would have... Oh, yeah, never mind. Ravix Nu still had the attack token. That Shock Blast makes a lot more sense. I was thinking, like, you know, develop a little bit more, but with 2 health still on the Vi, Shock Blast makes a lot of sense there. Oh, man. I mean, it was a rough opener for Ravix Nu. No timelines, no real cheap units to start to get on board. It was, like, the one innovative Blacksmith and just, like, a few too many, like, heavy removal spells in the Get Excited and the Blowback, and now it looks like we're going to see Ravix Nu even just die with a couple of those in hand. I mean, they can go for the double Get Excited here. but not if they develop a combat cook, and it looks like that's what they want to be doing. Again, try to find a lifesteal unit, but does it really matter when there's a Pirouette in Yada's hand? And this still only leaves them with one removal spell. I'm a little surprised to not see them go for the Fireth, because, you know, Fireth would transform into a different unit, and it would leave up double Get Excited. But even if they went for the Fireth line, and they did the double Get Excited to remove a couple of units, I'm still not convinced that they would have made it through the turn. So while I would have preferred to see the Fireth line a little bit more fight out of Ravix New, I don't necessarily think it mattered too much, probably the best way to put it. So now once Ravix New passes, you know, they're just sitting here thinking, okay, what is my Get Excited or my blowback target or what have you? Because, like, again, this is just, like, kind of weird sequencing where if Ravix New had played the Fireth first, then they could have developed Combat Cook as a secondary blocker, still at Get Excited mana. Now, they don't have that option because they already ate the Timelines trigger for the turn. This one's looking over. But we'll play it. We'll let it play out. And this is kind of what you were hoping for. As a burn player, I think. You were really looking for the Timelines and the Akshan Samiras and things of that nature. Or you were looking for, not necessarily Timelines, but you were looking for a Timelines fumble. And this is kind of what I was talking about with Vayne Rumble in the ban phase, right? Is like, Vayne Rumble can draw hands like this. Like, if they don't draw Vayne Rumble weapon, if they only draw, like, one of those pieces, right? Like, if they just draw Rumble and they don't draw weapon or Vayne, it looks really rough. That was game one. Not a lot of reason to sit through this screen, so we're going to fast forward into the game. Okay. Pretty decent hand from Yada. Yada's really good at drawing these Forge Chiefs. Ravix New's got a... this is the problem that I have with playing these Formidable lists. Is now... Like, Ravix New's hand's not bad by any stretch of the imagination, but it doesn't scale into the mid-game well. I'm also not a fan of Champ Strength post-nerf. I don't know if it belongs in as many decks as it's ending up in. Obviously, I like it in this Formidable list. You go wide, you've got a bunch of healthy units, you might as well get a big payoff spell, and a probably game-ending one at that. But Yada gets the opportunity to just go for the Scrap Traption and passes it up for the Forge of Tomorrow. Which, I mean, makes a lot of sense. Especially with two of them in hand, you gotta start getting those down. What's I'm curious about is, like, next turn, does Yada go for it? On the Scrap Traption, that is. And honestly, that might be GG. Like, Scrap Traption really takes over a matchup like this.
With a little help, I made you fly.
Which, yeah, I mean, because of the Forge of Tomorrow, this isn't even going to get punished by Shield of Durand. Yada still has Mystic Shot and Form Up mana. I was going to say I'm a little surprised to see Form Up over Sharpsight, but I think Sharpsight's still nerfed. I don't think it ever got unnerfed. I think it's still just +1/+2. Okay, good. I like Ravix New not going for it, understanding that with Yada representing mana, you are very liable to just kind of get blown out if you go for Shield of Durand onto the Broadwing. But it's not so much the... any kind of like, oh, it's unblockable. It's more just about... hey, I'm going to keep eating multiple units with this thing. Goes for Lux. I mean, Ravix New has, like, Champ Strength available, but that's not great. It's actually pretty awful. Like, Champ Strength here lets you, you know, kind of just pull something to the side with a 5-attack Broadwing. Actually, Broadwing probably even just gets Mystic Shot before the Champ Strength resolves, and then Lux just bounces off of the Petrosite 03. I don't remember. I wanted to say Charger, but that's the 3-drop. I don't actually know the 1-drop's name. The Horsey, the 02. And then your 6/6 can't attack because of the 7/7. So yeah, it's a really bad champion strength. This is what I meant when I was looking at Ravix News opening hand of like, this doesn't really scale well into the mid game. A proactive Shield of Durand.
Into battle with hearts aglow.
I don't think Ravix New is really running interaction here. Like, I don't think this is like a single combat list. Yeah, it's just Troll Chant, Shield of Durand, and Champion Strength. Really leaning into the Mage Seeker Jr. Sort of big focal point of the deck, which makes sense. So, not going to have a way to like punish Lux going into combat with, like, even then, doesn't have enough health on anything to actually trade on the Lux. But with Yada, ooh, that's a play. Just going after the Scrap Traption then? Didn't need a second shield to go after Lux, I don't think. But not going after Lux would be... I don't know what was up with the second shield of Durand. Because even if there's, like, a Mystic Shot here, the second shield would still get around that. Wouldn't get around Form Up in the Mystic Shot in Yoda's hand, I think, but that's kind of, I guess, just like a really big read from Ravix New. Okay, yeah, sure. Wants to preserve the health to actually go for the champion strength. Again, this doesn't, like... This doesn't stabilize like you need it to. Because now your Broadwing's going down to 5. Yada can probably just take the 7. They could also block and, if they really wanted to, finish it off with a Thermo Beam, but I think there are better uses for your I feel like rather than finishing that off with a Thermo Beam, a better use would actually be using like a 0-mana Thermo to pop a Spell Shield off of Galio. So I'm not surprised to see nothing come out here. Now I want to see if Yada goes... I mean, Albus Pharaohs makes a lot of sense. One of the biggest weaknesses of Formidable is quick attack, right? Because my unit comes into your unit, knocks its health down by whatever my attack points are, and then you strike back. So even Galio here, nothing is actually trading onto this Albus Pharaohs. If Yada just sends it into combat, whatever it bounces off of is only going to have, 2 Formidable attack when it bumps back into them. And this is knocking them, I believe, into lethal range on the Shock Blast. Which, again, really weak opener for Ravix New. Didn't have any way to scale into the mid game. Had a couple of champion strengths, but Yada got big on board fast. And that's why I think the Scrap Traption is such a big card in a matchup like this. Really just starts to take over the board, force a lot of resources out of your opponent. And, like, Ravix New's not winning on the open. Nothing's going down here because of that quick attack. Galio, I think, isn't... Yeah, Galio's not even going to level when all is said and done. It's only going to be 16 health left on board. Galio needs 20. And then whatever action Ravix New takes, just going to kill the Galio. Why not? Yeah, again, like, it doesn't matter. Whatever Ravix New does, Yada just hits him with Shock Blast, and that's GG. I feel like this is a pretty favorable matchup for Yada. Especially with the openers that we saw. Like, third champ strength, such a dud here. You have... No, man. It's probably an Anaka angle. Right? Just slam Anaka and I guess, like, hope to hit Galio. Like, rally at the next round start. Unless you're thinking you can push through a lethal with champion strength. I can't fathom... Like, I don't think I could craft a hand from Yada where you actually pull off a champ strength lethal this turn if you're Ravix New. Well, that was the top 4 of APAC. That was fast. Let's move on to the Grand Finals. So I just want to take pause here on the Grand Finals, take a look at the deck list that we've got out of each player. We've got Scion, Aphelios Victor, and this. Let me look at the particular flavor of Aphelios Victor. It is... Okay, it's Invoke, and it's not Starlit Epiphany. It is just Invoke with Victor and Mystic Shot. And for those of you that haven't heard me talk about my sort of classification system before, if you run Mountain Scryer, you are Invoke. If you don't run Mountain Scryer, you are not Invoke. And there are Starlit Epiphany lists that do run Mountain Scryer, and there are some that don't. So those actually fall into two separate categories. So we've got double Invoke plus Scion up against Elise Nar, Jace Lux, and the Samira Bryn. I like this for Koa. Again, like, I think Burn is going to struggle a lot with, like, pretty much the only deck I've played this entire season has been a couple of different flavors of Invoke. I'm a big Invoke gamer, so I'm very aware of how well it does into Burn. I'm not really worried about Samira Draven. That's probably even a 2-0able angle. And again, like, the reason that I didn't really have a good read on something like Elise Nar is because when I did run into it on ladder, I just really wasn't struggling as an Invoke player. So having these two, from my perspective, I haven't looked at the stats. I don't really care what the stats say, to be honest. From my perspective as Koa, I've got two favorable matchups here with Invoke, so I should probably ban Jace Lux. But then you've got this Scion list that doesn't really play anything like the Invoke decks do. Now, historically, Scion's had a better aggro matchup than one would expect out of it, but I'm not really sure where it sort of falls on the cycle of how do I deal with Jace Lux or the Elise Nar. That's definitely something Koa's going to have to deal with a little bit more. I think, like, I could definitely see Elise Nar being good into Scion, mostly because of, like, Three Sisters and Atrocity. These are cards that are difficult for Scion to deal with. If you Frostbite a Scion or Entomb a Scion, just kind of take it out. I don't think the Katarina really is too much of a main factor in Yada's mind in terms of determining whether or not this Scion is the ban or not. I think, if I had to pick, I would say, you know, ban one of the Invoke decks. I would probably ban the Victor Invoke if I'm Yada, because it has Mystic Shot in it, and Mystic Shot's going to kill some things in my burn deck that I don't want killed. I'd rather try and... It looks like basically Yada's going to be trying to 2-0 Scion, and Koa's going to try to be going after the burn deck, at least from my perspective. So we'll see how things actually play out here. I also want to catch what the bans were. It looked like it was, yeah, PNZ Invoke, and then, okay, actually goes for the Elise Nar. Again, not too familiar with the chart. Like, I still haven't looked at the charts on Elise Nar because, like, the season, like, the open already happened. What does it even matter if I look at them at this point? Go ahead and move me back down here. Ooh, I like... What board is this? That music kind of slaps. Might have to pick that up. I hear that? Hold up. Let me turn this up. Do I hear that? Oh, it doesn't slap anymore. What the hell? What was I hearing? All right. So, I mean, any hand with Lost Soul in it, a Scion, you're feeling pretty good. Obviously needs to find a couple of champions here. Meanwhile, Yada, ooh, looking kind of light here. No champions, no 6-mana spells. So we've got, like, I mean, off of the opener, advantage has to go to Koa, right? Not only do they have more cycling available to them, but they have that Lost Soul train to get going, while Yada really just needs, like, a 6-mana spell to kind of open the floodgates, and Jace is, again, just kind of something that is asking for a 6-mana spell. Open attack makes a lot of sense. The last thing you want to do is walk face first into a Shock Blast here. You know, only deal 2 damage to your opponent here. And, like, if they Mystic Shot, you feel pretty okay about that. I'm a little surprised to see the Rear Guard in here, though. Let me take a look at this actual Scion list from Koa. Katarina leans itself towards being a little more aggressive, but I didn't know that they were going, like, Rear Guard aggressive. Oh, this is... Okay, this is more like Burn than I initially realized. Triple Get Excited, triple Blowback, triple Decimate, triple Mystic Shot. 3 Draven, 1 Cat, 1 Scion. That's the thing about the Scion lists, is they're so hard to classify, and even lumping them together looks weird, but there's just... They're all, like, Scion at the end of the day. This one might have even should have been classified as Burn, but I didn't notice that there was Decimates in it when I was running the stats on it. But again, that's the thing about Scion. It's so malleable. You can really build it in so many different ways. Okay, still not finding anything. Still not discarding Lost Soul either. It's continuing to get on board. I like the attack on the mana pool here. Yada doesn't have mana for a 6-mana spell here either, so you know that you're immune to Shock Blast. Doesn't have the opportunity to get down a 4-3 with fearsome here, but you already got 2 Mystic shots out of your opponent, so you're feeling pretty good in terms of this fearsome rider actually getting through. Or Risen Rider? One's Fallen Rider, the other's Risen Rider. I assume that the Fallen is the one that you discard, and then the other one rises up. That makes sense, right? So this should be Risen Rider. I mean, Koa's got great development here. And it's just a matter of how willing are you to play into, a Challenger Jace, which I think pretty likely. And I think this is where Yada has to develop something. Yeah, whether or not they develop Jace or something like that is where Yada has to play a card for the turn. And now Koa, okay. I really thought Koa was going to go for the Flame Chompers, but it looks like they want to play more aggressively with the Grenadier here. Probably just Lost Soul plus Zonite Grenadier. Potentially opens you up to Shock Blast, in which case you would want to lead with Zonite because kind of diversifies your threats, and then if your opponent passes, you don't feel bad about going straight into combat to dodge the Shock Blast. But you also know that your opponent doesn't currently have Shock Blast. Obviously, the top deck presence of it is there, the threat of the top deck is there, and that's something that Koa is going to be thinking about. But I think what I like most here is opening Zonite Urchin with Reborn Grenadier. Who's hovering Flame Chompers? This isn't even live. Sometimes I'll be casting and production will like hover a card that has like very little to do with the point I was making. Mystic Shot onto a blocker is not how I expected this turn to open, but I don't hate it. I do not love it, but I do not hate it. And I think Yada has some decent options here. It's kind of awkward. Your safest option is Scrap Traption, because that leaves you with Get Excited to deal with something. You know that your opponent has a Flame Chompers. That's public information thanks to the Boom Baboon. It's not like that's a main deck Chompers. So, like, the Lux is a little vulnerable in that regard, which is why I didn't love that play. The Get Excited top deck, obviously great. Okay, doesn't actually go for it. I kind of like it. It's technically damage negative because you are... Oh, no, it's actually... No, it's damage positive because you get to discard the Grenadier. I was going to say, otherwise, like, you're killing this 3/3 so that, like, a 2/1 can slip through, best case scenario in terms of, like, damage amplification, but no, like, this is damn near lethal. There's, like, 15 damage that Yada can't do anything about. And this is why I think the Lux line was so risky, because you knew your opponent had the Chompers. Granted, it didn't really expect to be taking even more damage. Like, that Get Excited top deck was juicy. Okay, yeah, forced to use a 1-mana Scrap Traption. Get a block of 4/3 and, only take 11. But now you don't have your spell to turn the Lux on and start taking over the board. And that's the angle that Koa has been attacking from the entire game, is like Yada's lack of a 6-mana spell. And, they could top deck one. I think statistically it's unlikely, though. This deck doesn't usually main deck that many, but okay. Assembly line is about as good as it's ever going to get. But I don't think Yada is killing Koa before they find Decimate, Scion, now just any other burn spell to pair with a Mystic Shot. So, while Yada really found their way back into the game with that assembly line top deck, I think they're too low on life for it to really matter. But this is where Koa could get punished for playing so aggressively with their non-Lost Soul cards. Like, now it's just tripled up on Lost Soul. Kind of an awkward angle. And now we see how aggressively Yada wants to try and play for the remainder of the game. Knows that they are very much on a clock. Being at 4 life against a deck with Decimates and other burn spells, you really don't feel safe at 4, even though it takes your opponent 2 burn spells to actually get you through. The good news is Yada's not taking unit damage from here on out. And they do have their Mage Seeker turned on, so next turn they can even throw down, like, 2 challengers. But you've just got to start going. I think you had to attack with Lux there if you're Yada. And, okay, it's just over. It doesn't matter. Uh, that's rough. We've seen some rough hands so far, folks. These have not been clean, and I still haven't gotten to see Elise Nar in action. I didn't think this deck was going to be getting banned as much as it is, but it kind of makes sense given, well, like, it had a very high presence on the weekend. So, like, obviously it's, you know, one of the boogeymen. It's the highest represented deck. But if I went into this open not understanding why this deck is good, and now that I'm watching the VODs, I still don't get to see it in action and don't get to see why this deck is good, I'm just going to be lost forever on this meta, which is not a situation that I want to be in. So on my own time, I'll probably go back and watch, you know, some top 16, some top 32s, maybe even top 64s if I find time. But like, I'm not gonna do that on camera. I'll like do that on my own time. Now we get into the stuff I know though. Invoke, baby. Love the turn one Starlit Peak. Is that even its name? Or why don't I know card names anymore?
We were peaceful.
Star Tipped Peak. That was close. Meanwhile, Yada's got a pretty late game hand. I don't think Invoke is a matchup where Shock Blast is particularly good, especially with Mountain Scryer being a 3/4. You know, like your opponent has one backline unit, and it's just not something you can really deal with. Ugh. Kind of an awkward hand from Koa, so, well, I say awkward, which is not really true. Obviously, they've done a very good job of getting on board up until this point, and now they have the turn 5 Cosmic Call, and I don't think Jace Lux is a great deck for punishing that turn. So here, like, Yada can develop Jace, and that's about all they can do. This isn't a good Shock Blast angle. You know that Koa wants to only spend maximum 2 mana this turn. They're probably not going to throw down a Mountain Scryer or anything. Even if they were, like, what would Yada hold up for that, right? Is Jace Lux just supposed to be a burn deck? Is that, like, the missing piece in all of this? If it's running Get Excited in the main, you kind of assume that's an angle they're going for, right? I don't know, man. I don't know what it is about this meta, but apparently, like, this feels like a meta that I just have such a loose grasp on. Like, it's just such a poor understanding. And I think a lot of it is just me looking at it through the lens of Invoke, which I think is, like, very clearly the best deck. The stats showed it. It was the opinion I had going in. It's why I've only played Invoke this season. And maybe I'm just too high up. I don't understand. Like, I don't know. There's a lot of gaps in my knowledge on this meta. I'm just not a fan. But Koa gets to, you know, resolve Cosmic Call now. And there's not a lot of reason to pass. I think Yada would give the pass back if Koa just passes here. Says, yeah, okay, I'll keep you off Cosmic Call for a turn. So even though it's kind of awkward, you do kind of usually have to go for it. And it's not like there's a crazy punish Yada's going to have on 7 mana. Even if they had the full 5 unit mana here, and Yada was able to actually develop a Lux, you know, you just grab a Supernova. That's kind of the problem with these threat-like decks, where the only thing that is really going to stick on board is, like, Jace, Lux, Albus. And the fact that Supernova just removes 2 of them for 5 mana once the Cosmic Call is resolved is, like, so big. Yeah, like, this Shock Blast is the best line that Yada had available there in terms of trying to put pressure on, and it's so weak. Like, Yada's so low on cards, is about to pop off, yeah, wow, 6 damage. Holy moly, how's Koa ever going to recover? Wow, you're doing it to him. The one good thing is that it normally would be a little awkward for Koa to develop the Samira here. You know, if Yada throws down a Lux, then all of a sudden, like, that's really the angle to get back in. But because Koa has the Moon Silver to drop the Supernova down even more, this just feels so one-sided from here on out. It's almost like Yada's kind of got to use another Shock Blast here to level the Jace, continue to bump up the Pharaohs, but then, you know, Yada rather runs into this weird problem where next turn, if they go to develop Pharaohs pre-combat, they're just walking into Supernova. And if they go for an open attack, Koa just kind of undoes all of that with a star shaping. This is what I said. Go for the Shock Blast. Try to play as aggressively as possible. You might be able to get your opponent down to 5, which is not a horrible angle here. And I think this is actually where, if I'm Koa, this is probably where I go for the Supernova. Trying to, yeah, like Supernova's really all they've got unless they want to roll the dice on a Behold the Infinite from Targon Tellstones. But I think Moon Silver into Supernova is your best stabilization tool here as Koa. Next turn, Albus comes down. It is awkward that you don't have any units in play, so you get to hit Albus with the Equinox, which, like, you know, it's better than not doing it, but would have loved to have a unit in play first. This is definitely a losable position for Koa. Not by a lot, but it's not a horrible spot. If Koa Equinoxes, develops Mountain Scryer post-combat, might have some game. They'll be at 5. Star shaping back up to 10. Jace Shock Blast combo's pretty rough. But then it just kind of comes down to what actually comes off the star shaping. Probably even, like, Moon Silver's the Mountain Scryer. Okay. Warrior's not a bad pickup. Could just grab the Warrior, develop it here, and then actually threaten an open pass. I think I like Moon Silvering the Warrior as well, just to protect against the Hexbliterator. But might be thinking, you know, if my opponent wants to spend 6 mana to Hexbliterate this, I'm totally fine with that. Here, I actually like an open pass from Koa. Knowing that your opponent has a Jace in hand, you have a Challenger down. I'm not mad at a Zoe development out of Koa either. I think that's like a very non-committal play, but I would have liked to just see the gall of a sort of hard open there and say, go ahead, do something. What, are you going to Shock Blast me? I'll heal. Actually, I probably wouldn't do anything. If they Shock Blast, I'm not doing anything, dude. I'll pass again. I probably wouldn't pass again. At that point, I'd probably do... Like, if Yada opens Shock Blast, that's when I would develop the Zoe. Be like, okay, we can do something else here. Still not a strong reason for Koa to fire off anything here. Okay, yeah, I like the Moonglow attempt onto the Zoe. Do I? It's a little awkward. Because I think Yada's just fine with that. They have a Challenger. But Yada really wants to find the win next turn. So they've got to get on board here. Actually, looking more at Yada's hand, I think I really hate the Mage Seeker. Because I liked either Jace and defend with Hexbliterator, or just jam Albus, let that eat the Challenger, the Warrior. Like, I think that Yada got a little too scared of the Warrior when they have so many threats that they need to be developing. And this needs, like, this Jace needs to get dealt with immediately. Okay, Living Legends. Yep, fire off everything. Koa might even be able to level Zoe here. I don't think you needed to pale there, just because, like, it's replacing itself with a card. So, not like you're saving hand space there. Okay, nothing to deal with the Jace. Okay, yeah, go for Behold the Infinite. Oh, Hush is the Jace. And then Equinox. Okay, so Zoe's fully protected. And not worried about a Shock Blast or anything this turn. Even so, I think now Yada just goes for the gate. The acceleration gate. And just says, hey, I've got a bunch of... You know, I just got a bunch of quick attack units, so I guess I'll send them in. The Zoe leveling here, though, is probably game over. Especially with a Great Beyond yet to come down. And honestly, if Yada does go for the acceleration gate here, Koa still has an Equinox backup. And can Written in Stars potentially into a Zoe, which would give a stun. I didn't like that Equinox. I would have preferred Great Beyond. And then if Yada goes for acceleration gate, save the Equinox to like take quick attack off Albus Pharos and knock them back down to a 6/5 and block that with the Great Beyond. Something like that is what I would have liked. Because I don't think silencing this 2/1 actually even mattered. Yeah, and we see that like that 1 damage onto the Great Beyond from the Equinox was not relevant for lethal. This is 1 shy. Koa doesn't have lethal because they didn't Starry Scamp first. So now they don't actually have... They have 13 points of elusive spell shield. Awkward sequencing from Koa. And there's Giddy Sparkologist. You can Giddy Sparkologist the... Are you just worried about burn plus... Like, it's reasonable. I would say it's reasonable from Koa to be worried about like Shock Blast on Nexus and then a burn spell. So I get not going for the Giddy Sparkologist, especially with Yada like using a Shock Blast to pop spell shield last turn. I think it's kind of reasonable for Koa to be worried about another copy of Jace or another Shock Blast or something. I don't think that was like an awful read or anything. The problem is I guess like no, I do have issues with that because when you sit down and you really think about it, right? If Yada had Shock Blast, you're not actually playing around that with an open attack because you're not actually killing them. So now, okay, never mind. I guess like if you kill the Jace, yeah. Okay, no, I'm dial it back, Boulevard. The issue that I had was like if this Jace persists into the next turn, then they just have the Shock Blast line again. But if your plan was to kill the Jace, then this makes a lot more sense from Koa, because you kind of assumed that your opponent would need to spend 6 mana, like use the first Jace interaction to actually kill the Great Beyond. That's why the spell shield was popped. But all of this could have been avoided if Koa had just played the Starry Scamp before the Great Beyond on the previous turn. Albus Pharos gets to walk right into an Equinox. And that should do it. I wonder... Oh, okay, yeah, that was the finals. Hold on, there's one thing I want to look at here. And that was, spells. Piltover and Zon Demacia. I was looking to see if there was anything that, okay. Yeah, that wasn't actually a scoop angle, solely because you can still run out Reggie, and, you know, this is pretty niche, but you still have, like, Formula, Hextech Anomaly, Stuttering Song Spinner, Progress Day to try and find you your burn off the top, because you already had the Get Excited in hand. Your opponent's only at 7, but that was APAC. Let us move on to EMEA. Congratulations to Koa for their first place finish, but let's see if we can actually get some Elise Nar action going. All right, it took me a second to get used to this because, like, when you hover, I'm in the at least I got the CS versus Shihu section, which is Gamma versus Mr. Scandalous. So this should be the top 4, right? That's what we're looking at here. This is the top 4. Okay, yeah. We're in the right place. So, we've got an Elise Nar mirror going on. Then we've got, is this Invoke from Scandalous? This is just Starlit Epiphany non-evoke. Okay. So we've got Invoke, not Invoke, and Elise Nar, and then Gamov is on Invoke Epiphany, not just Epiphany, and then Plaza Guardian and Elise Nar. Okay, I really want to see some Elise Nar gameplay. I've been talking about how, like, I don't understand this deck. I don't really get why it was the most represented deck. You know, was it like, is it like a Tristana angle from last Eternal Open? Because, like, when you look at the Shadow Isle cards in Elise Nar, it's like the same Shadow Isle cards that have been in every Shadow Isle. It's the same 4 Shadow Isle cards that have been in every deck for, like, the last 6 months. It's Quietus, Soul Harvest, or not Soul Harvest, oh man. Soul Cleave? No, it is Soul Harvest. Soul Cleave is the combo card. They got too many souls. Yeah, Soul Harvest. Okay, I was right the first time. I got it confused with Soul Cleave for a second there. I threw myself off. So yeah, it's Quietus, Soul Harvest, Vile Feast Atrocity. And then they played Elise. Really went out of the box with that one. So, like, it's funny because I've been talking so much shit for, like, the last month and a half about, like, how weak Shadow Isle is, and then, like, Shadow Isle decks consistently appears, like, the #1 spot, but it's just Quietus, Soul Harvest, Vengeance, Atrocity, Vile Feast. Like, Vile Feast, Atrocity in Eternal, and when you're looking at Standard, it's just, like, Quietus, Soul Harvest, Vengeance, maybe one other Shadow Isle card. Or it's Nasus. Nasus, of course, being sort of the exception to all of this Shadow Isle shit talk that I've been doing. Because it's the only thing that leans into the archetypes. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about this game that needs to start. Oh, bans are Elise Nar and Plaza Guardian. Okay. I was a little surprised at how little representation Plaza Guardian had at some of these. I thought it was still like an Eternal staple. There were only 5 of them in the EMEA Top 64. There were only 2 in APAC, and then AM had my back. Brought 12 of them, came in at the #4 deck. I was still pretty big on Plaza Guardian going into this weekend. I was surprised to see it so low in a lot of these regions. Okay, here we go. Mr. Scandalous is the one that is on the real Invoke. No, this is the fake Invoke. This is not real Invoke. This is just Epiphany. This hand looks so weird from Gamov. Obviously, like, they've got the mysticism. They are up against a turn 5 Cosmic Call. And one of the big problems I have is that this just kind of looks like another deck that folds to Supernova. Which is one of the big problems I had with, like, Timelines. And a lot of, there's a lot of talk from, like, the Aegis League and stuff about how, like, Timelines is doing really well into Invoke because, they get on board early, they get really big on board, it can be difficult to deal with. But then in my experience, like, Invoke, as long as they got a Supernova off the Cosmic Call, usually ended up fine. One Cosmic Call one Supernova will, like, kind of stabilize you. You need a little bit more than that. Usually it required like a second Supernova off something else, but like it'd start it would stop the snowball. It's probably the best way to put it. And so looking at this Elise list, that's still something that I'm kind of struggling with here. And actually just choosing to take a bunch of spell mana or, develop the innovative blacksmith as well as the Elise. And you know that this is a turn that Scandalous really wants to take light, even though Scandalous has the victor. doesn't necessarily want to use it, and that might be their undoing, is really trying to get down this turn 4 Cosmic Call, because you might end up taking a lot of, like, Scandalous is in this position that a lot of Invoke players are going to find themselves in, where, like, you could end up taking a lot of damage on turn 4 and then again on turn 6 when your opponent goes for the open attack because they get to full develop on 5. That's not the case here, though. Gonna really keep it to a minimum. Only 1 damage is gonna stick. Scandalous gonna throw down the messenger as well, get the draw off, bank that 3 spell mana. Sunburst looks so good here. And Gamoth's just like going wide on board. This doesn't feel very impactful. Runs everything out post-combat, which I get. You know, if instead of a messenger, it was like a charger, and Gamov went for Innovative Blacksmith into a charger, that could look pretty awkward. Cosmic Rays Living Legends really just has the full suite here. I like the Living Legends. It can be kind of weird to get Cosmic Rays value. This is weird to me because, like, the Elise spell looked weird to me on the previous turn. Those 1/1s don't feel like they're doing anything. You don't really have, like, a go-wide payoff or anything. And then Gamov just top decks the Vile Feast to actually make it a good line by leveling the Elise here. So now gets to go for the kill there. Could drag the messenger out of the way if you want to, but all you're doing is pushing... What, like you're sacking a Spiderling to get Gnar through. Which... I don't know if you gotta do that. But I don't know how aggressively this deck feels like it needs to play. And, you know, Gamov probably just trying to, like, set up an atrocity line here. Believe we're currently at, like, a 9/9 on the Warden. I guess that's the thing, is, like, I've never seen a Warden resolve either, so I don't know if it's, like, obviously it's got the wording that it does, but I don't know if it's, +1/+1 for every subtype, or for every... Oh, grant allies. Okay, so Warden's actually a go-wide payoff. I thought Warden only buffed themselves for some reason. That makes a bit more sense. So if Gamov throws down the Yeti this turn, then next turn everything gets +4/+4. Pieces are coming together. I guess I just literally just misread Warden. I always thought Warden just buffed themselves. But again, my opponents weren't really making it there with a wide board. And if that's the case, maybe should have gone for the Cosmic Rays. Okay. Throws down Immortal Fire. I don't know that Immortal Fire was better than Victor. I don't think Victor's close to leveling, but I also don't think a 7/5 matters too much here. Like, even an elusive one, when you could have tried to, like, roll Lifesteal or something, you know, it's something to get you back into the game a little bit. And it looks like this might even end up being just Dusk Petal into... Like, Dusk Petal into Living Legends, which is not going to help you clean up this board. This would have looked a lot better if Victor was in play instead of this Immortal Fire. But I don't think this Victor is even really leveling here. Yeah, I think it'd be like one more card until the Victor levels, and that's just a little bit too awkward. This still just kind of has to be a supernova. Serpent's too small to kill anything, even with like an Aphelios weapon. I still can't believe. Like this really all comes back to Gamov top decking the Vile Feast, it feels like. You know, like having the Challenger and the Fearsome on this giant Spiderling, as opposed to it just being a 5/5. Because one thing that you don't really deal with very well as Invoke is Fearsome. You got a lot of 2-attack units in your repertoire. And that's just lethal, right? Ooh, one shy of the Living Legends. One thing worth noting, again, like, if that Immortal Fire was Victor, I think this Living Legends would be online. Maybe it wouldn't. I don't think Victor's leveled, and if you had gone for double Falling Comet last turn, actually, if you had gone for double Falling Comet last turn instead of, well, no, because then you'd have one less mana anyway. I don't think it really matters, but the fact that the Immortal Fire didn't do anything is like, ugh. Yeah, no, those are not game-winning options out of Mr. Scandalous, and went for this rather than a Sunburst. Sunburst wouldn't have done it anyway. There's too much Fearsome on the side of Gamov. Makes sense. All right, let's go to game 2. That was a good showing from the Elisnar, though. That was kind of what I was looking for in terms of, like, okay, what is this deck doing? Doesn't help that I guess I just misread Warden the entire time. My opponents have only resolved Warden against me one time, and they didn't have anything else in play, so it just kind of fed more into the idea that Warden only buffs itself. Now we've got Invoke Epiphany for Gamov, just Epiphany for Mr. Scandalous. Which, you know, Cosmic Call's a big difference maker, obviously. Scandalous has it, Gamov doesn't. That's kind of an awkward start right there. Could take us to a game 3 right off the bat. But Gamov's got time. Time to find it. And even if you don't find it, it's not like you auto lose. Wait, Scandalous is also running? Oh, I didn't realize, this is actually Invoke Epiphany, not just Epiphany. How did I miss that? Wait a minute. Because that's not the list I have. Alright, something's off here, because the list that I have for Mr. Scandalous for PNZ Targon does not have Mountain Scryer in it. So I gotta look into that. Because there's a Mountain Scryer in their hand, and that's not what I have. Interesting. Gotta take that up with my people. Getting fed the wrong lists. Bad information. The Sun Monument stuff is like, I don't think that's too big of a difference maker on Gamov's side. I think it will help them persist through a strong Cosmic Call out of Mr. Scandalous. And sometimes that's all you can really ask for. But this is where Victor does a lot in the mirror. Never mind, it's a Mountain Scry. So the thing I really like about Victor... What? So what I wanted to see was Victor on the side of Gamov, okay? I wanted to see Victor come down and start scaling, because one of the problems with, like, Cosmic Call is, like, you know, Victor comes down on 4, gets a keyword, gets another keyword when you Cosmic Call, gets another keyword on 6, and all of a sudden Victor's like a 6/5 with 3 keywords and can be a bit of a menace, or, like, potentially even force you into, like, a supernova off the Cosmic Call. So, like, that's a big advantage that Gamov could have pushed. Like, that is kind of how you fight back against Cosmic Call a lot in my experience. And instead, Gamov goes for the Mountain Scryer. Gets a really weak pull, but, like, you know, that's not their fault. They didn't know what they were going to hit. That's the problem with Mountain Scryers. You have the whole pool in front of you. Then Mr. Scandalous says, fuck Cosmic Call. Give me my own Mountain Scryer. Bro said, fuck Cosmic Call in the Invoke Mirror. It's not like Gamov had a board that demanded an answer. And now is going to get hard punished by just Pale Cascade while they delay the Cosmic Call even more. The problem I have with this play... One, Mr. Scandalous didn't know that they were going to get offered Meteor Shower if going after the Zoe was the high priority. Number two, there's like 5 cards that stop Zoe from dying to this. Targon Tellstone, because Gamov has 5 mana, they could have gone Blessing of Targon. As well as Pale Cascade, like we just saw. I almost would have preferred Mr. Scandalous just like send forth the Zoe, one at the Serpent. But I don't know why Mr. Scandalous is like delaying their Cosmic Call so heavily. And it doesn't help that at every turn, the play that they have made to delay that Cosmic Call has been severely punished. Like, went for the Mountain Scryer instead, hit with the Equinox, then goes for a Meteor Shower, doesn't get to kill the Zoe. And I believe that now that's the 8th card? It's like the 8th card for the Zoe. So it's leveling this turn. Because I don't think Super Cool's Star Chart has been played yet. And now Mr. Skin, like, go ahead. You know, throw. This is like this is a pretty good time to throw down second Mountain Scryer. If you really wanted to, you could have waited on it because you know that Gamov, still going to attack with the Zoe, and I don't think this second Mountain Scryer that you've pulled is. Actually, I kind of hate playing the Scryer there. The reason being that Gamov still hasn't gone to combat, and now they're more incentivized to grab Equinox off of the star chart that they might have used before sending Zoe in. 2, Victor could have pulled Challenger, and then, you know, Gamov just has to, like, play something off the super cool star chart that is... Actually, just play the star chart that is public information, and then they get to kill your Mountain Scryer. So, I think Mr. Scandalous could have just waited. And if Gamov just goes, hey, I'm going to level Zoe and pass and, like, not go to combat or something. Oh, look, there's Challenger on the Victor anyway. If Gamov had just passed the turn, then Scandalous goes, cool, I don't lose any of my board. Zoe didn't go to combat or anything. Next turn, here's Cosmic Call, which, again, has been delayed by a turn because Mr. Scandalous wanted to throw down Mountain Scryer pre-combat. If they didn't play Mountain Scryer pre-combat, I don't think Mr. Scandalous is forced to use their... Crescent Strike there that I'm pretty sure they got off of that Mountain Scryer anyway. That's a big Cosmic Raise. So, like, what am I missing here? What's the reason Mr. Scandalous didn't just set up to jam a Cosmic Call on 5 or 6 or 7? Just like that's the win con in the mirror. That's how you do it. It's the card that matters. How do you even deal with the Victor? I think it's just play a star tip peak and pass. None of these are really appealing. If for some reason Mr. Scandalous has just like made a bet that he can't play Cosmic Call, then he's got Blessing of Targon available next turn to contest the victor. But yeah, I don't hate the popping of the Spell Shield there. Set up for a really nice Cosmic Rays next turn on the side of Gamov. He's gonna have first action too, so all right. Yeah. Open Cosmic Rays. You know your opponent has a 7+ cost Celestial, so you don't want to give them a chance to use Cosmic Inspiration, as that would completely take your Cosmic Rays off board for the rest of the game. So fire it off now, and this is why I like Victor again. Victor has solidified himself as a threat. This would be a pretty different game if Scandalous had played the Cosmic Call for 8 mana a little bit earlier, but hey, they didn't, and now Victor gets to completely take things out. I mean, the leveled Zoe doesn't really hurt either. And Gamov being at 8 doesn't mean too much when they have the Sump Monuments. Okay. Woof. Quick attack, Challenger, Victor. No way to... Now Mr. Scandalous wants to play the pass game. They're like dead, right? I guess they have Hush for the victor. Push come to shove. But right now, they are looking at just about lethal. Yeah, it looks like Gamov's going to push it. No? Okay. I was going to say, I don't think Gamov has a clean way to try and push the lethal. It would have to be like... You would have to Targon Tailstone Hush something to get the +1 attack on the victor, and then Pale Cascade for another +1 attack. And that's like so weak into a couple of things that Mr. Scandalous could have. So I like Gamov instead going, okay, you know what, I'll go for the control play. I'll kill the Zoe. I'll kill the Traveler. I'll, you know, let my Zoe push through, get this Behold the Infinite. And finally we get, you know, the Cosmic Call resolution on the side of Mr. Scandalous, which, honestly, it's not too late for them to come back into this. Especially with Victor not having Spell Shield. I mean, the beauty of having Cosmic Call resolved is that Mr. Scandalous could even just develop, like, multiple game-ending threats next turn. Like, right now, they get to go Great Beyond into 10 Living Legends. Ooh, Gamma found the Epiphany, though, so they are not dying. So 11 mana is... Like, you could do 1-drop into Great Beyond. It doesn't free up any hand space, so it's kind of whatever. Trickster is not Great Beyond. Which means... What is Scandalous going for here? This doesn't, like, free up any additional hands. Like, Mr. Scandalous's hand is so reactive that it's kind of hard to, like, free up a meaningful amount of hand space, but it looks like they're just going to, yeah, run out the Equinox. I imagine here comes the 1-drop plus the Dust Petal Dust into the Living Legends. Try to find, I guess, like, Supernova. Okay, Sunblessed Vigor instead. I don't think Sunblessed matters a whole lot at this stage of the game, but I would have preferred to see the Dust Petal Dust go. Okay. Oof. Not great. I forgot that if you saw me like shake my head there for a second, this is the reason I don't like casting with the camera on, is because you get to see like my sort of my physical reactions before my brain catches up, because I forgot that Scandalous resolved Cosmic Call, even though I was staring at like these 5-cost Celestials, and I was like, Okay, 6 mana on a Golden Sisters. Even though, like, I knew the Scourge was 5. Okay, yeah, stun on the Scourge. Unfortunately for... unfortunately for Mr. Scandalous, Golden Sisters does not proc if you hit the Nexus with a Sump Monument. So, that's not even going to be any lifesteal. Gamov might not even let him have it. Okay. Gamov says I'll take 20 shrooms. Probably doesn't need to Epiphany here either. This would be a very preemptive Epiphany. Well, it doesn't have the mana for it anyway, but even if they did, I imagine Gamov would just let that go. Finally finds their own Cosmic Call. And now gets to play a... Oh, okay. What is going on here? Oh, a lethal push. That makes sense. I was like, what is happening? Yeah, Hush. It's either 9 damage to the victor or... Yeah, pull that out. That opens you up to... I thought they were going to use the lifesteal blocker, but doesn't matter. Gamov finds it. The Blessing of Targon. That was a weird one, man. I've played a lot of Invoke Mirrors. I feel like the one matchup I really have down is like the Invoke Mirror. I didn't really like how that was played from Mr. Scandalous. I didn't love Gamov's moves either. I was talking about specifically, I think the only issue I really had with Gamov's play though was going for the Mountain Scryer on 4 as opposed to the Victor. But that's like, I don't know why Scandalous took so long to jam Cosmic Call. What am I missing? Okay, so I don't remember where I cut off, but essentially I wanted to go and check with Aegis and be like, hey, here's Mr. Scandalous's deck list that you have. They opened a Mountain Scryer, which, like, obviously we just had the wrong list. What I don't know is how we had the wrong list, but I'm sure Aegis can get to the bottom of it. They're a professional organization. So here we've got a full-on mirror match. I believe they're both on Invoke Epiphany as well. Yeah, no, just straight Epiphany out of either of these players. And then Plus Guardian and Elisnar Warden. So again, I think that in a matchup like this, again, without really understanding this Elisnar list, it's kind of hard for me to call. I don't think the Invokes get banned. At the very least, I would assume that it's going to be like Seraphine, Samira, that gets the ban over something like Invoke. But it also depends on if they're running Cat. Plaza Guardian's like the only other deck I've really like put hours into this season, and I've actually started to really like one of Pursuit of Perfection, because sometimes the Plaza Guardians just aren't enough. And I'm sure with the Nara Warden, you've kind of run into situations like that where you get all your Plaza Guardians out and your opponent just has like 2 units that are a little bit too big for it to matter. So it looks like Gamov is on the one of Pursuit of Perfection. So that is the list that I like a little bit more, at least in those terms. But let's go ahead and, I guess, fast forward to the bans, and then see... Oh! Okay, yeah, Elise Warden was taken off. That's kind of what I thought based on what we saw a couple minutes ago. Okay, it looks like we get a Samira Seraphine mirror. Woo! Flashback to last Eternal format. There's that Pursuit that I really like as a difference maker for Gamov. And it's something that at least I got the CS is going to have to be really cognizant of in terms of, you know, saving some kind of big removal piece for that. Either that or, you know, trying to hang on to that removal as long as possible and then getting punished because they don't have it. And at the moment, like, at least I got the CS, at least in the opener, doesn't have that Disintegrate or that Execute style ability. I don't think either of them are running Execute style abilities. We're not looking at, like, any Scorched Earth or any copies of Execute, so it really is just going to be on Disintegrate to do the heavy lifting here. But the early games of these are so blasé. They're a little boring. They're a little inconsequential. all you really need to do is keep your hand space small so that you can resolve formulas and stuttering song spinners. I like firing off the song spinner on curve, and one of the issues that I have with formulaing on 3 is it doesn't give you full song spinner value on 4 if that's something that you have available to you. And I think I would rather song spinner on 4 than formula on 3 in a lot of situations. Because if you just throw down like a Samira, you know it's probably not tabling in this matchup. There's really nothing else to throw these early Mystic shots and high notes at. And this hasn't been like, you know, I mean, these aren't great hits from At Least I Got the CS in terms of what was gotten off of their song spinner, but it's not awful either, right? Like, they're getting on board a little bit. They force a Mystic shot out of Gamov, which, like, Gamov certainly doesn't mind. Sometimes you actually just really like it when your opponent throws units down, so you can actually free up your hand space of these, high notes and Mystic shots and things like that. It's weird that, like, the sound effects are so high, but, like, the music just isn't there. I'm trying to make sure there's background noise, and it's just not happening. Like the diversification from CS in terms of, like, where the Ruthless Predator was played out there.
I excel at making heads turn and roll. No problem.
It's just a Mystic Shot or a high note. Pick your poison. It's just... I don't even really know, like, what to... This is where solo casts really catch up with you, when there's big lulls in the action here in the early game. Like, this is the kind of mirror that's really gonna push the fact that I don't have a co-caster to banter with. This is where we'd go completely off topic, just talk about whatever. You know, you can see what's happening in real time. It's not very... They're not really kind of, like, setting up for anything specific. They're just kind of playing the cards that they can because that's what they need to do. They need to reduce the cost of Plaza Guardian. Gamov needs to count up towards the Pursuit of Perfection. You need to find Plaza Guardian, Seraphine, and a copy card. We see Blood for Blood in both players' hands. Gamov already has the Plaza Guardian. Neither of them have Seraphine. So At Least I Got the CS going to have to proactively fire off like one of these time tricks to try and dig for something like that. But rather than dig for a specific piece, is probably just going to be going for any double draw spell that they can find, right? Between formula, drum solo, whispered words, anything like that is going to be a high priority. Tellstones is cool, and next turn you will have mana for Progress Day, but instead hits the skip, finds the Seraphine. So now 2 pieces of the combo are there. We've got the Blood for Blood, and we've got the Seraphine on the side of CS. The one thing that I've started to try out in all of this as well is, like, rather than when I have the combo and I'm playing like a removal heavy mirror, rather than lead with the Seraphine, I lead with the Plaza Guardian, and then I'll throw down the Seraphine and I'll get my double up even if it dies. And if I throw down the Plaza Guardian and my opponent just kills it instantly, then, you know, they could have killed my Seraphine instantly. And I think I'm in a like, it depends on the situation, obviously, but I've had a lot more situations where I feel comfortable sitting on that Seraphine in hand and waiting to get another Plaza Guardian than I do like sitting on a Plaza Guardian and trying to find another Seraphine. You know what I mean? But again, it's obviously like situation dependent. Yeah, Gamov's got the combo, but I don't think Seraphine's leveled yet. Yeah, CS's Seraphine isn't leveled. Ooh, gets the rough beat of, I don't think that's a playable spell. I think you have to have a dead landmark for that to actually bring back. I don't think you can just cast it without one. That always, like, that Sharesies, there's like 1 or 2 others that are just unplayable spells that you can roll that feel really bad. Gamma finds a better one. It looks like they're both at minimum 7 out of 9 on the Seraphine. Maybe even higher. I think the arrows start to actually show up at 6. Gamov's is... I might be crazy, but I feel like Gamov's is more aggressive. Gamov might be at 8. I don't know how these arrows work, man. Only very recently did I start, like, kind of paying attention to them in any capacity. But CS is going to be able to level it now off of this Song Spinner. Bone Skewer is not awful. You know, it's protection for the Seraphine. The only awkward part is, like, it probably doesn't actually kill anything. These are awful hits. Like, Violent Discord, it's really just... Entreat is good. If at least I got the CS, could have, like, switched those around a little bit and maybe gotten, like, Glimpse Beyond and Entreat and Bone Skewer instead of getting this, like, awkward Violent Discord. But, you know, it's going to progress the Seraphine level up. And it looks like CS actually was just at 6. And now should be at 8. And this is where the Bone Skewer comes in. When your opponent has to, like, put the Disintegrate and the other spell on the stack. Like, this is prime Bone Skewer value. If that's what CS wants to go for. I don't see why they wouldn't. The only awkward part is... Okay, that's... I was going to say. It would be awkward if you can't Entreat and Bone Skewer. And you want to double the Entreat with the Seraphine. So it is really nice that they had the Flare to get that done. So now going to get, ideally, a Samira and a Seraphine. Double Seraphine's really awkward. And now I wouldn't be surprised if they just don't put the Seraphine on top of their deck. Because, like, having 2 Seraphines and drawing into a Seraphine, not what you want right now. And Gamma have already used their token for the turn, so even though they've got Blood for Blood, not going to go for a big board establishment here, just going to hang on to that. Yeah, like, Advanced Intel's a much better top deck. Ancestral Boon, kind of awkward. Especially when you have to pay mana for it. Like, CS just still has a hand that isn't doing anything. They still don't have Plaza Guardian, which, you know, sort of the most important piece of the puzzle. Because, like, if you don't have Seraphine, like we saw Gamov do, you can at least throw the Plaza Guardian on board and start to get something rolling. Whereas CS is just now sitting on a lot of duds. Like, they have... Like, this is nothing right now. This is, like, Seraphine protection, but now you have 3 Seraphines, so that doesn't even matter. This can't be played because you don't have the hand space. This is nothing. This is, like, whatever. This is literally unplayable. This doesn't do anything. So, in their 10-card hand, they've really only got 4 cards, and Mystic Shot's already been played, so that's not getting doubled up. They can High Note to take out this Seraphine, which is really all they can do right now. Meanwhile, Gamov has the Samira, they have the Blood for Blood, they have the Rummage with the Seraphine, they have the Heimelsglocker. There's I think an EMEA player named Heimelsglocker or something along those lines. Like, just, they have the Pursuit of Perfection icon as their Twitter, and they have for years. And so I just think of them when I see that. This is a pretty good opportunity to iterative, if you're Gamov. Shed up for a nice big open attack, but I understand that with the fleeting Aftershock, Gamov also really looking at that Rummage. Because the problem if you go for this and your opponent just, like, has an answer for one of these, you know, they go to, like, 9, but then if they can kill these other ones or, like, throw in Plaza Guardians on board and start to fight you a bit, then you're in a bit of a weird position. Dumps the Blood for Blood, which I don't hate. Finds other Seraphine, that's good. Now the question is, does at least I got the CS finish off this Plaza Guardian? It'd take some doing, actually. It would take, like, Mystic Shot and High Note, or Mystic Shot and Bone Skewer, something. And at least I got the CS already let 1 Seraphine die. So with this dying, they are down to their last Seraphine.
Sorry, Papa.
But they can develop it here and now without any fear of retaliation. Unfortunately, just, like, doesn't really do anything. You might as well generate the spell now. Unless they don't want to overdraw. If their idea is, like, let me Ancestral Boon so I don't overdraw. I don't think that's awful when they're still just in the find Plaza Guardian stage of the game. But do not find it. They get Ravenous Flock instead.
Don't have to be sharp
Ooh, those are some good cards for Gamov, who I think has it here. I don't know how far along this Pursuit of Perfection is. I imagine it's got to be close. Iterative, if Iterative doesn't get them there to the Pursuit of Perfection, then they are in a little bit of a weird spot. Well, not a weird spot because like they still have a bunch of Plaza Guardians, right? But like not a guaranteed win this turn spot is probably the better way to put it. And they don't have a guaranteed win this turn anyway because CS has the pirouette. Yeah, it looks like that wasn't enough to actually get it there.
The crowd writes the songs. I just sing them.
But ooh, at least I got the CS generates iterative improvement. That's big. It's unfortunately not good enough defensively. Like, because Gamov also used iterative instead of, like, you know, blood for blood, so we're looking at 6/6s pairing into 6/6s rather than 6/6s into 5/5s. This was unfortunately not as much of a power play as I got the CS kind of needed. This isn't Pirouette on the stack either. Okay, it's Guile. A little less mana intensive. Still leaves open the Bone Skewer. I'm curious if that Bone Skewer is going to get used now. Again, this is the last copy of Seraphine for CS. But also probably aware that, like, saving the Seraphine isn't going to kill anything. Like, Gamov would almost certainly be able to level the Samira in response. And then CS would be tapped out. But now that Gamov's in combat, I don't know if it's worth saving the Seraphine. It might be because, like, CS isn't running Ezreal, CS isn't running Pursuit of Perfection. So, like, winning the game without Seraphine when your opponent has a Seraphine feels like a really tall task. And I think a good number of this does just kind of come down to, like, unfortunate entreat pulls from at least got the CS, getting the double Seraphine rather than any copies of Samira, and trying to play for that game a little bit. But, like, now the Samira goes down, the Plaza Guardian goes back, and now at least I got the CS has double Plaza Guardian. Without Seraphine to Blood for Blood, one of these Plaza... Yeah, like, the Blood for Blood in hand makes me feel like Seraphine, like saving Seraphine was the line there. Because that would have translated into even more Plaza Guardians. But that's not how it played out, and I'm pretty sure CS can't come back into this one. They still haven't drawn any Disintegrates. Okay, there's the Disintegrate, so they do currently have an answer for the Pursuit of Perfection. And actually, because they've got a 7/7 Plaza Guardian thanks to the Ancestral Boon, not in a horrible spot. It's really going to come down to, like, again, like I said at the top of the game, does I got the CS feel compelled to use the Disintegrate on the Plaza Guardians, or do they think they can save this for the Pursuit of Perfection? It's really what it's going to come down to. But, like, when Gamov's at 13 HP, still has this Seraphine established, still has Plaza Guardians, is getting all these defensive tools. Like, it feels so rough to try and win without a Seraphine of your own. And if there's a way to get it done, then 7/7 and Plaza Guardian's a really good start to it, especially with Blood for Blood to, like, get you just another... That's the awkward part. It gets you 1/5/5. You have to damage a unit to do it. And it looks like Pirouette plus Disintegrate was hovered there. Okay. Alright. Ooh, Disintegrate's a 6/6. Swindle's gonna grab probably Blood for Blood. It's a lot of hand information. I think that's full hand information. I don't remember if Gamma saw the Mystic Shot the first go around. But at the very least, it knows 3 of the 4 cards. And actually went double blood for blood. So now they can take, like, 5 damage. So you could just throw out, you know, 1/5/2 in your 4/4. Actually, you could, yeah, you could full block here and here to help. It's so good. And now CS doesn't have any way to stop the Pursuit of Perfection. And even if they did, Gamov's got the Blood for Bloods. So just copies the Pursuit and throws down a bunch of 1/1 cats. And that should be lethal in game number 1. And yeah, now with the double blood for blood, wouldn't have even mattered if at least I got the CS that saved the Disintegrate. Alright, let's see what we can find here. Nothing. Followed by Inside of Ages, followed by nothing. Let's see what Inside of Ages can find. Does not fire off Inside of Ages in response to the Pursuit of Perfection. It doesn't find anything for it anyway. Okay. I mean, that was a Seraphine mirror, if I've ever seen one. And I've seen some before. So now we're gonna get... Let's do that. I just wanted to click back in so I could do this. Whoop. It's very important that we watch them play the start tip peak. You can't just see it appear on the field. I know object permanence is kind of an issue for some viewers, so I really need to make sure that you watched it leave Gamov's hand. Now, this matchup is a little awkward. It's not bad for Invoke. Like, you never really get to stick Zoe, but they also don't really pressure you on the Cosmic Call stuff, especially if you don't put things on board. Like, the worst case scenario for the Invoke player is kind of just your opponent going, like, you know, draw spell into, like, sputtering and just really developing and putting pressure on with the Seraphine. This is one of the matchups, though, where Cosmic Inspiration gets to be like a really big blowout. So that's pretty cool. And I do think that you have, you know, sort of significant enough threats to throw down in the early game, like this Mountain Scryer, that are just like a little bit too difficult to deal with for the Seraphine player. They require just like 2 cards or something like that. Victor's going to be another one that does it. Zoe, unfortunately, really only requires 1. And now the Mountain Scryer is like softened up. If at least I got the CS wants to Aftershock it, they can, but then that's going to delay their Stuttering Song Spinner. Fortunately for Gamov, though, does not have the Cosmic Call, so we've got a little bit of a game on our hands. Okay, Pokey's really good. Trixie Tentacles and Disintegrator pretty good. Trixie Tentacles not as good in a matchup like this where your opponent actually has very cheap and reduced cost cards. And Quicken or Electro Harpoon. Huh. Yeah, opening Electro Harpoon onto the Scryer makes a lot of sense. No, well, Gamov could protect it if they want to get a little wet and wild here, which... I was going to say, I don't know. I would have thought about it. I would have thought about blessing a Targon there. I don't know if I would have committed to it, but I would have thought about it. But running out Double Messenger, like either way you're running out Double Messenger, right? That's kind of the point. Actually uses the Disintegrate for 0 mana, just really wants to... Okay, yeah. It makes sense, right? Like, really want to get the Seraphine leveled. There's already a Rummage in hand. There's already a Time Trick in hand. If you cannot use these draw spells to level the Seraphine, you're in such a good spot. But taps out... Well, I mean, Song Spinner was already tapping out below Retreat. But second Seraphine in hand means at least I got to see us kind of chilling anyway. Gamov draws the Cosmic Call, but did not leave themselves enough mana for it. And that's one of the things you have to be very cognizant of when playing Invoke, is just, like, constantly in the mid-turns, leaving yourself with enough mana to top deck Cosmic Call. Like, turn 5, turn 6, turn 7, obviously, like, the ones where it's really important, right? Like, just because you don't have Cosmic Call doesn't mean you're good to just tap out on turn 4, right? Because if you draw it, you want to be capable of doing it. But like retreat's still available for CS, with the rummage and all that available. It's a good spot for at least I got the CS. Gamov's not, you know, in a bad sort either, though. Like, sure, they don't get down Cosmic Call this turn, but they're also not dead next turn. Proactive retreat to level the Seraphine. It's not like for 3 mana invokes killing her in response, so I think that's a pretty fair play. And just preserve as much life as possible. Ooh, finds Purify as well off the Seraphine. Not a terrible hit. Alright, here we go. Time Trick finds probably Plaza Guardian. Disintegrate's already been cast, so it's not like you get the good double up value on it to try and like pop a spell shield or something. But the cool thing about Seraphine is that if you have Disintegrate and then a spell you haven't played, for example, like Mystic Shot, put Mystic Shot on the stack, then Disintegrate like normal. Mystic Shot will resolve, which will double it, and that first Mystic Shot, or the copied Mystic Shot will go above Disintegrate, so you'll pop Spell Shield with second Mystic Shot, then Disintegrate resolves, then normal Mystic Shot resolves, and you can still get through Spell Shields that way. But, like, Purify being doubled up, not a bad sort either. Ooh, we're gonna get the double Living Legends? It's not like Cosmic Rays or Immortal Fire are, like, great here. Because the problem with Cosmic Rays is you're paying 4 mana to kill a Seraphine, and if you grab Living Legends, you might be able to find 3 mana to kill a Seraphine while refilling your mana and finding a bunch of other things to play. The question is, can at least I got the CS kill Gamov this turn? The answer's probably no when you're down to 1 mana like this. But could push fair amount of damage. Goes for the Guile. Playing aggressive. Saying I want to push through just a little bit more. Yeah, 6 is a killable range. 6 is scary. Alright, Gamov, you got 1 turn to kind of pull it back here. Is that just lethal? Off CS. I don't think Mystic Shot's been played. So we might be looking at 6 to the dome. But I think you're hard-pressed to find a situation where Gamov actually taps under that. I love the 2 mana Whispered Words. That's so cheeky. It's so good. I love it. Yeah, Gamov, you gotta, like, at least I got the CS has so much time to just sit here and fall asleep on the pass button. Doesn't have to go for the lethal right now, because Gamov is going to almost certainly tap below Star Shaping in order to find a stabilized board state that can withstand just a full-on attack from at least I got the CS next turn. So now comes the Living Legends, number 1. Not a lot. Not a lot. Another blocker. The problem with double Living Legendsing in 1 turn is you don't really have a whole lot of hand space for that second one. So, curious to see how hard Gamov goes here. If they think this Destroyer can actually become a lethal threat, then they could just run out everything they pulled off the Living Legends. But okay. CS. I don't. Maybe CS. Because it was just a Mystic Shot put on the stack. I wonder if CS was just like checking to see if Mystic Shot had been cast already this game. If they just forgot and were like, all right, let me put this on the stack, hover the eye real quick, see if it's doubled up. I get that. We've all been there. Okay, still on Star Shaping mana, so at least I got the CS. Probably not going to pull the trigger just yet. Okay, Living Legends number 2 finds a Charger. It's not great. All right, Victor, you gotta do something crazy here. You need a actually Challenger is all it would take to force CS's hand in terms of that Victor doing some. Or lifesteal. Like I don't know why Gamov's sandbagging the Victor spell. Just get all of the new information out of the way first. Because honestly, if that Victor rolls lifesteal, I want to go straight to combat. Okay. Oh, we're hushing the Seraphine. Why have we... Why haven't they played Victor spell yet? You've taken so many inconsequential actions before this Victor spell. Like, you opened with a Charger. Alright. Forced to use the burn here to set up for Purify. Just no Victor spell at all. Which I get now that the spell shield's been popped. But Gamov had so long to play that Victor spell. I don't know why that wasn't their first action after playing Victor. Instead they chargered. And it could have been very relevant. If this was like lifesteal, tough, quick attack. Now we'll never even know. I'll never even get to know what this Victor keyword was gonna be. Oh my god. I'm in shambles. Did Gamov do it? Are they stabilized? They can only play one Star Shaping this turn, but they got rid of a couple of the Plaza Guardians. They got rid of all the burn. Well, here come more Plaza Guardians, but Plaza Guardian is not a lethal threat. It just clears your board. And Gamov, again, has like double Star Shaping to resolve to try and find lethal threats. At least I got the CS. I don't think can die to any singular threat. Aftershock into Hextech Transmogulator. Probably going to keep him alive through anything that Gamov could establish here. So we'll see what the Song Spinner finds. Battle Bonds is always a good one. Battle Bonds... Well, it's going to force a Star Shaping at least. Okay. The other one's not great, but that Battle Bond, or Brothers Bond, Battle Bond, something Bond, Gold Bond. Okay, Living Legends back on the table. Big pop-off turn for Gamov, potentially. And at least I got the CS. Probably just uses the Bond here to push the damage. I don't know if it matters. I don't think there's burn left for Gamov, really. Mystic Shock got used. The Static Shock got used. So you're not really looking for anything that you can double. But I don't think you're getting a gotcha moment with this later on. So I think you might as well just use it now. You know, force your opponent back into that fear state of needing to leave open Star Shaping, even though... While there's no main decked card that at least I got the CS can have left that's going to end the game, there are still so much random generation that it's something they have to be cognizant of. I actually went for Scourge instead of the Sisters. I want Gamov to play fast and loose with their life total here. I want them to be like, there's nothing you. I've run the math, I looked at your deck list, there's no burn left in there. And even when we think about random generation, we already saw what was randomly generated off of the Seraphine, I believe. At least there's nothing in hand that looks out of the ordinary that didn't come off of the Song Spinner that we just saw. And I don't think Song Spinner's really offering up burn spells at this point, especially with Electro Harpoon out of the pool, because it was used earlier to try to take out a Mountain Scryer. So, even as far as Song Spinner goes, because you're only getting 2 mana spells, I think the well is empty. I don't think there's any burn left, even through random generation, for at least I got the CS. Or at least not enough to kill you from 5. That's juicy. That was a good one. All right, Cosmic Inspiration first. Folks, lead with Cosmic Inspiration so that your units cannot die in response to it. You're silencing the... Okay. What is that? Is Gamov not getting inspired? I mean, like, Traveler's unlikely to die. I'm not sure why the Seraphine was hushed. Like, I understand if it's just, like, nerves from Gamov, who's, like, going through the list, and maybe they even, like, pulled up Mobilytics like I didn't, and we're like, okay, actually, there are some 2-mana spells in the pool that can still get randomly generated and kill me. I'm looking at things that deal damage. I think I'm locked into Shadow Isle failure. But so far, all I found was, like, Fracture. Fracture will deal 2 with a Seraphine active. Ebb and Flow if you get that far.
Let's mix up the sentence, yeah?
Fracture, Ebb. Line them up, make it rain.
What once was two, now is one.
Pokey Stick got used, I think. Ruinous Path. There's no burn left. There's not a lot of fast speed burn left. There's a lot of slow speed burn left in the pool. Time Winder. Unspeakable Horror. There's like 5 burn spells left in the pool. I don't know if Hushing was a... I also just got word of why the last match was so screwy. It turns out that the one where like I was like, oh, this isn't Epiphany, this has Scryer in it. Apparently that was Samira Zoe. Did they draw a Samira? I think they drew a Victor. I don't know. Looks like they found it though. Gamov clutches it out. I know it wasn't like super active in those final moments, but like, you know, it's just Gamov's got to play the cards, right? Good job on Gamov to stabilize there, though. It was looking dicey for a little bit there, but that's the resiliency of Invoke that I love so much. That's why I love that deck so much. Still only one game of Elise Nar Warden through these 2 top 4s so far, though. But let's go check in with the Americas.